Good morning. We're learning as Chosr for Shlem Filan Chai Baserach Mavasian Bas Chaya. We're on Daf Pei Daled Amid Beis, 3 lines to the top. Bam Rabbi Yochanan, Kasa de Charshin v'le Kasa de Paishin. Better to use a cup of water that had the kishuf set on it, rather than using a lukewarm cup of water, because the warm water means unboiled water. Well, as we know, is very dangerous. It has all kinds of parasites and infectious things in it. That's only if it's in a metal kli. Warm water in a earthenware kli does not, I guess it doesn't get into it. It keeps it protected. That's only if you don't put in, they used to put in some spices into it. But the herbs would also, the spices would also protect it from getting bacteria. And even if you didn't put it in an earthenware kli and you didn't put in these spices, it still is not unsafe. If you don't boil it, if you boil it, it's also safe.
You boiled it and then it became lukewarm?
I think so, yeah, yeah.
All right.
I mean, that's what we do, right? That's the way to potable water is if you take water from an unsafe source, if you boil it, it becomes safe. That's the only one that makes sense to me. The one about the metal and earthenware kli, I'm not sure what that means. Right? That without boiling it, putting it into an earthenware kli will somehow save it. I'm not sure what the process is. Someone who had got an inheritance, and he wants to use it up. He wants to get rid of it as quickly as possible. I mean, it's not obviously we're giving a exhortation of for the opposite. I mean, don't do this because if you do this, this is how to lose all your money. Yilbash klik pishtun. He should wear linen clothing. V'yishtamish b'klik schuchas and use glass kalim. V'yiska payil and and hire workers and don't sit with them. Let them work without any supervision. Yilbash kli pishtun bekisna rumisa. When it says wearing linen clothing, it's talking about Roman linen, which is very expensive and very fragile. It will wear out quickly. It's talking about white glass that is also very expensive and fragile. The Iskar Pile and Valyeshev Imam, when it says to hire workers and don't sit on top of them, Beturi, that's talking about when you use them as oxen to take care to supervise the oxen. The Navash Pistayu, because oxen are very large, damaging animals, and if you let them run free, if you let the guy, sit on top of the oxen and drink his beer as they're going, he'll wake up an hour later and he'll find out that he trampled the whole field. But stam, I guess a regular pile, if a person is running a business and he has pile, if it's sitting on the head, is not always a good thing. Darash Bavira. Now we're going to get back to the name of Kisi Hadam. Darash Bavira. Ravira learned. Zimnin Amalim Mishmeder of Ami. Sometimes it said B'Shem Rav Ami, Zimnin Amalim Mishmeder of Asi, sometimes B'Shem Rav Asi. My Dichsev Toiv, I'm sorry, we're not yet up to the back to Kisi Adam. Toiv ish choinen, a good person is choinen, he's merachem, he gives, he does chesed, umalva, and he lends, yikalkal dvar mishpat, but his own affairs, he should do them, he should conduct them with mishpat, with stringency. So which means, when we say that a person should arrange his fares with mishpat, with stringency, with care, means he should always eat and drink below what he's capable of affording. But he should dress according to his station, meaning a person should dress in a bakavadik way. People will take him seriously. And for his children and his wife, they depend on him, then he should give you more. He should give them a little leeway and let them buy things that are more than what his station is. Because they're tali in him, and he in turn, his parnasa is going to come from the Rebbeinu Shalom. So when he's dealing with his wife and children, he when he gives them the Rebbeinu Shalom, Mahu Chan Navata Chan, you want the Rebbeinu Shalom to provide for you, you should provide for your family properly. You should not be stingy with them. But if you're going to be stingy with them, the Rebbeinu Shalom will be stingy with you. Okay, now we're getting to Kisei Adam. Darish Ravina Pescha de Reish Galusa. Ravina darshan at the doorway of the Breish Galusa. Hashoichet lechoila b'Shabbos. Someone who is a choila on Shabbos, and he needs meat. It's important for his refuah. So the din is al tzpikuch nefesh. For someone who's a choila, you're allowed to be mechal Shabbos. So they went and they shechted an animal for the choila on Shabbos. Chayiv lichsis. He darshaned that you are chayiv to do kisei adam on that, on after that shechita. So we're talking about he needed venison, for example. He needed a chayiv, or he needed a knife. He needed chicken. So the din of kisei adam. But when you mechas adam, you generally you have to dig up the dirt, which is also on Shabbos. It's not clear whether we're talking about doing a malacha deraisa or malacha derabanan, but you have to do a malacha in the course of doing kisei adam. Now, the kisei adam is a very interesting pshat, a very interesting thing he's saying, because kisei adam happens after the shechita. There's no such thing that if you don't do kisei adam, it passes the shechita. The shechita is a valid shechita without the kisei adam, but you are mechuyev to do it. So the question is, essentially, is this kisei hadam that you do, is it part of the shechita? The Torah was mata the shechita b'makam pikuach nefashos b'makam achayla on Shabbos. So the kisei hadam is the covering the blood afterwards included in that heter. Or do you say, like we just suggested, the kisei hadam is separate from the shechita? Don't do the kisei hadam. It's not the kisei hadam on its own is not deicha Shabbos, right? If someone shechted before Shabbos, you can't do kisei adam on Shabbos. I'm not sure. I don't know what the rules are as far as how long you have to do kisei adam. I'm not sure why you can't just wait till after Shabbos and do kisei adam then. Maybe it will come up later in the Gemara. Amalu later in the parak. Amalu Rabba Ishtaima Ka'amar. He said something that is nishtaimim. It's hard to understand how you could say such a thing. How could it be mutter to, you're saying chayiv lichzos? How could you be do kisei adam on Shabbos? It's not needed for the shechita. As we'll see, he'll give reasons for it. Lishtamu la'amura minei, because he said something that is, I believe, is Rabbah said is incorrect. Therefore, you have to take away his meturgim. The person Rashi says different shot. The one is that you have to take away his meturgim. He's not going to be authorized to give drashos in public. The Tanya. Why do I think this is so wrong to say the kisei should be done on Shabbos? The Tanya. It's going to take us a while. We're going to go through this brisa, and it's eventually going to get to the raya of the question that we have of whether the kisei adam of a shechita on Shabbos is deicha Shabbos. A koi was a animal that we're not sure if it's a behem or machaya. You're not allowed to shecht it on Yom Tov. We came across this brisa before, because by shechting it on Yom Tov, you cause a chiyuv of kisei, and we're not sure whether you could do the kisei or not, because we don't know whether it's a chaya. V'im shachtu, if you did shecht it, ein mechasen es damai. You can't do kisei adam misafek. Mikal v'chayim. How do I know you can't do a kisei adam misafek? I'll tell you from a kal v'chayim. Excuse me. Uma mila shavada doicha Shabbos. We all know that if someone gives birth on Shabbos, the next week you make a mila on Shabbos. It's doicha the Shabbos, even though a vada mila. Ain't sveika doicha yamtiv. But if you have a suffix of mila, it's not going to be doicha yamtiv. if someone gave birth on Yom Tif, well, we're gonna see what the case of Sveik is. Um, right? This well, the din of Shabbos that a milah on Shabbos is daicha. That does not, if as you all, I'm sure people have come across this. If someone gives birth on Friday afternoon, Ben Hashmoshes, it's not daicha Shabbos. We say misafik. It's not. You're not going to bring. You're not going to be. Since you're not sure if the meal is supposed to be on Friday or on Shabbos, even though a mila is daicha Shabbos, a savik mila is not daicha Shabbos, and it's certainly not going to be daicha Yom Tov. If you have a Suffolk Mila on Yom Tov, it's not going to be Deichel that either. I shouldn't say certainly. It's not going to be Deichel that either. Kisoi, she'ein vadoi Deichel Shabbos, the din of Kisoi, that if someone shechts on Shabbos, we're going to see what it means, vadoi Deichel Shabbos. The Gemara is going to speculate, maybe it's talking about with our case, where you shecht because of a chayla. But the Gemara will address what is she'ein vadoi Deichel Shabbos. Certainly, the case of kisui of a koi, which is a suffix, should not be deicha yomtiv. That's the kavachayim. Amaloi. So this is the kasha on Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said, I'm saying this is the kavachayim. That this is where Rabbi Yossi gets it from. That a koi you can't shecht on yomtiv because you make a kavachayim from mila. Amaloi, so they said back to Rabbi Yossi, you can't make that kal v'chaimer from me. Let Tkiya Shayfer begvulim techiach. I'll prove it to you from the din of Tkiya Shayfer outside of the Beis Hamikdash. In the Beis Hamikdash, they taka would blow Shayfer even on Shabbos. The din is that you blow Shayfer every Rosh Hashanah is always Yom Tov. You blow Shayfer, but if it falls out on Shabbos, and as we do to this day, we don't blow Shayfer on Yom Tov. On Shabbos, and because the Chacham Geyser, maybe you'll come to bring it. It's you need a omen, someone who's an expert. You'll bring it to the expert on Shabbos. You'll be over on Haitzah. So they will Geyser. You can't do it on Shabbos, but that's happens to be. That's only. It's not in the Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hamikdash didn't apply. They didn't have to go anywhere to get it checked out. So in any case, we say Tkiya Shefer Begvulim Techiach She'ein Vado Adoicha Shabbos. Right, there's a vadai of blowing shofar, and he can't do it on Shabbos. Usveika doicha yomtiv, and the suffix of tkiya shofar is doicha yomtiv. Right, that we're going to see in a minute what the suffix of this is as well. What's the suffix? Are we talking about the suffix of that every Yom Tov, we don't know whether it's the first day or the second day. Rosh Hashanah you often have that problem of which day is it, unless you're right near the Beis Hamikdash where the Bezdin was making the decision. It was hard to get the information, or as we'll see later on, it may be a different suffix. But in any case, so on Tkiya Shayfer, that it's not Deicha Shabbos, and the suffix is still Deicha Yom Tov. So don't bring me a raya from Mila. Even though it's true that Mila it's Vada is Deicha Shabbos and Tzveika is not Deicha Yom Tov, but by Tkiya Shayfer, it's the other way around. Heishav Rebbe Lazar Kafir, so Rebbe Lazar Kafir answers on behalf of Rabbi Yossi, this kash on his Kal V'chaimer, Rebbe Lazar Kafir Beribi, Tshuva. He answered, Mala Mila Shchein Neheges Belela Yom Tovim. How could you bring a raya from Mila? You're going to make a kasha. How could you bring a Kal V'chaimer from Mila that's not noig on the nights of Yom Tov? Tovim B'kisa Shenoig Belela Yom Tovim. So yes, a final kasha on Rabbi Yossi's. I said it wrong. Rabbi Lazar Kafir is asking on Rabbi Yossi's Kal V'chaimer from Mila. He says, Mila is not noyig on Yom Tov nights, right? There's no such thing as Mila at night, so you're never going to have it at night. Kisei Adam, you could shecht an animal whether by day or by night. Shecht a chaya on day or night, or knife, and you're going to have Kisei Adam at night. So you can't bring a raya from Mila. Mila has an extra chumrah that it's not naig by night. So maybe that's why misafik you can't do it on Yom Tov. This is something that this Kavachimer Reb Yasi is something that it was very hard to find an answer for it, and Reb Elazar Kefer was able to come up with a kasha on the Kavachimer. So that's the brisa. So now we're going to get back to our original question, which was whether when you shecht an animal on Shabbos for a chayla, whether there's kisei adam on it. And part of the brisa was katanimius kisei she'en the katanimius kisei she'en vadai deicha Shabbos. We said kisei, which is not a vadai, is deicha Shabbos. My vadai the kisei the loy dachi Shabbos. What is that case that we said that the vadai kisei is not deicha Shabbos? How do you have kisei adam on Shabbos? You're not allowed to shecht on Shabbos. So how do you have a kisei adam that's vadai that you say is not deicha Shabbos? Lava sheichet l'chayla b'Shabbos. It's l'chayla talking about a sheichet l'chayla on Shabbos, and it's saying that that it's not deicha Shabbos. So this should be a teretz, an answer to our original question. This will be l'chayra the reason why Rabbah said we have to take away the meturgim from Ravina for saying such a thing, that shchita of a chayla for a chayla has a din of kisei adam, because this brisa seems to say otherwise. How do you know it's talking about the dafka case of chayla? Maybe it's talking about where he just shechted on Shabbos, even though you're not allowed to. No, the brisa was comparing it to mila. If we were talking about it over here, it wouldn't be a valid comparison. So it must be talking about a similar case of Mila. How would you learn out from Mila, where you're allowed to be Doicha Shabbos Bevadai, to a case of Kisa, where you're not allowed to do it, where it only comes up through an Aveira? So that is the teretz. So l'chayra, it's not necessary. So l'chayra, we have a raya. This is the explanation of Rabbah why he rejected the Kisei Adam of a chayla on Shabbos. Now we're going to go to analyzing this brisa that we brought up in the course of trying to bring a raya. We said in the course of we wanted to ask on it from Tkiya Shofar outside of the Beis HaMikdash, where one is not allowed to blow the shofar on Shabbos. We said it's vadai is not deicha Shabbos, and it's sveika, the suffix of Tkiya Shofar is deicha Yom Tov. My sveika. What suffix are we talking about? That we're saying is deicha Yom Tov. Ilaim is suffix chayil, suffix Yom Tov. We're talking about the general issue of we don't know which day is really Yom Tov. Right? We always have the reason why we have 2 days of Yom Tov, because we're not sure when they were Makadesh Levana. So other Yom Tovim, the truth is we can, even Bisman that they had the Bezdin, they would have the answer by the time Yom Tov rolled around, which was 10 days or 14 days after, or even Shavuos was only 5-6 days. You had enough time to get the message. But Rosh Hashanah was on the first day of the month. They didn't have time to get the message. So maybe that's what we're talking about, the suffix, that it's a suffix, and it's Deicha Yom Tov that we always blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, on both days of Rosh Hashanah, even though one is a Sveika de Yuma. So tomorrow, that doesn't make any sense. If you think about it for a second, it doesn't really make any sense. Hashta Vada Yom Tov Dachya, Suffix Yom Tov, Suffix Chom Libaya. What's the problem? You're saying it's Sveika de Yuma, and even though it's a Suffix Yom Tov, we still blow the shofar. But the only reason you're blowing shofar is because of the Yom Tov. So why is it any worse? If it's Yom Tov, then there's a mitzvah to blow shofar. If it's not Yom Tov, then there's no mitzvah to blow shofar. So how can you bring anything from that suffix? That suffix is not. There's no heter in the fact that you're allowed to blow shofar on a suffix Yom Tov. Ella suffix ish suffix isha. We're talking about someone who's a tumtum or androgynous, and the question is whether they can blow shofar um, on Yom Tov. That's the suffix. The suffix is not whether it is Yom Tov. It certainly is Yom Tov. But the question is whether this person who's a suffix ish, suffix isha, are they allowed to blow? Because the Gemara is assuming that a isha you can't blow shofar for on Yom Tov, even though obviously we do that. But this is Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi lo tamei. The Amar isha v'adayis nami tak. This is going according to Rabbi Yosi, who says Rabbi Yosi will disagree with this because Rabbi Yosi holds that we take a blow even for an isha. So certainly for a suffix isha, suffix ish, you would blow. But the chaylik on Rabbi Yosi would say that you don't blow for an isha on Yom Tov, on Rosh Hashanah. You can only blow for men. If she wants to listen in when you blow for a man, or when a man blows, she could do so. But there's no such thing as an isha blowing or blowing just for an isha because you're being over on the Takanas Chachamim. The Chachamim say you're not allowed to blow. You're not allowed to blow on Shabbos, and you would also not be able to blow on Yom Tov. Okay, so the Tanya, Bnei Yisrael Samchin, V'lei Bnei Yisrael Samchas. This is the another case where we have a similar machlekes. There's a din of smicha on kachim that you have to be samech on an oil, you have to lean on it. And the mitzvah of being samech, of smicha, is said only for men. And the Tanakhama says, since the mitzvah is said only on men, only they are mitzvah to do it, only they are allowed to do so. But Bnei Yisrael are not allowed to, because you're not allowed to support, you're not allowed to have hana from kachim. So by leaning on it, you're having hana. So an isha who's not mitzvah is also to do so. Rabbi Yosef Rav Shimon Aimim Noshim Soimches Rishus. They say no, it's a mitzvah. If that's the way the mitzvah is done, so it's mutter even for Noshim, even though they're not mitzvah to do so, they have the right to do so, and it's not going to be over. Since they're doing it as a mitzvah, it's not going to be over on Mila. So the same thing with the shofar on Yom Tov, that a Noshim are also going to be allowed to be blow shofar in spite of the Isser, because that's part of the mitzvah. That's the way the mitzvah works. And they have the right to also be yoy to the mitzvah. Amar Ravina, L'mayde k'amri Rabbanan nami yislei pecha. And he says, so we asked this kasha, even according to the Rabbanan, you could even ask a kasha on Rabbi Yosi. It means it doesn't have to be a kasha just because
We don't have a suffix. We don't know
right.
what the suffix is yet.
Right. So we could ask we're asking a kasha from Tkiya Shaifer on Rabbi Yosi, L'shitasei of Rabbi Yosi. We're saying you could even ask a kasha on Rabbi Yosi according to the Rabbanan without coming on to this kasha. Malat Tkiya Shaifer. Rabbi Yosi wanted to bring a raya from Tkiya Shaifer, saying even according to the Rabbanan, you could ask a kasha. Malat Tkiya Shaifer shechein vada Doicha Shabbos, right? We were asking L'shitasa of Rabbi Yosef, but we say you could ask kasha, a different kasha from Tkiya Shaifer, that you can't bring a raya from Tkiya Shaifer to Kisei Adam. Mal Tkiya Shaifer shechein vada Doicha Shabbos v'migdash. When even the migdash, you're even Doicha Shabbos, right? We were saying the whole Kavachayim was gebayit, and the fact that Tkiya Shaifer, its vaday is not Doicha Shabbos, yet the suffix is Doicha Yom Tov. But he's saying that you can't bring that such a raya because it's not always that Tkiya Shofar is not Doicha Shabbos, because in the Beis HaMikdash it is Doicha Shabbos. Time Kisi, the lesser klal. How can you talk about Kisei Adam, which is never found on Shabbos? Even a vaday, there's no exception that there's no vaday Kisei Adam on Shabbos. Or when there's a shchita where it's vaday Shabbos, you can't be Doicha Shabbos. Heishiv Rebbe Loza Kesa Berivi. So Gemara quotes what was Rebbe Loza Hakefa Berivi asked a kasha on Rabbi Yosi. Mala Mila Shechein Ein Neheges B'Leila Yom Tovim. He had asked in the Brisa, how could you bring a raya? You, Rabbi Yosi, want to bring a raya from Mila that it's not naig b'leila yom tovim. B'leila yom tovim hu delay naga b'shar leila naga. He says, what kind of kasha, what kind of raya is that? What kind of kasha is Rabbi Elazar Kefa saying that it's not naig on leila yom tovim? It's not naig at all at lilas. So it's not a chumrah that it's not noyig on leila yamim tovim. It's just a general rule that it's not noyig b'layla. As so he says, "Elamala milish chein neges b'laylas could be yom." He says, "Eina chanami." That's what I mean to say. I don't mean that it's not noyig on leila yamim tovim. But dafka, it's always not noyig at night. So that's the kula, or should say the chumrah of mila. Tamikis noyig b'laylas could be yom. Amar Rabba Zechar Ben Advam Shamar B'chia Ein Li Aleim Tshuva V'Hesher Rabbi Elazar Kefa B'Ribi Tshuva, and the Gemara just repeats the end of the brisa. Zok the Mishnah. Hashoichet b'nimtzas treifa. Someone who shechs an animal and he finds it to be a treifa. Hashoichet l'avodas gechavim. Someone who shechs for avodah zarah, which is going to be aser b'hana. The animal is going to be aser b'hana. Hashoichet chulim b'fnim v'koshem b'chutz. Someone who shechs chulim b'fnim, which is going to make it that it's the animal is going to be also to eat. The kachim b'chutz, and he brings kachim b'chutz. Chayev ha'oif, and it's skalim. A chayev ha'oif that he was reveyo, or that the animal killed someone, so they have a din skila and they're aser b'hana. Reb Meir mechayev. Reb Meir holds you're still chayev in kisei adam. The Chachamim Paitrim, the Chachamim say it's Patim. And this is as the Gemara is going to say in a minute. The Gemara doesn't say it, but it's assumed this is the same machlekes that we had Rav Shimon and the Chachamim earlier. Before we had said it b'shem Rav Shimon and the Chachamim, the Tanakama, the Gabi Oise ve'Espinoi, that Rav Shimon says a shchita she'ein ruya is leishma shchita, and it's not going to be considered to be it's not going to be considered to be oisav esbenoi if you did a shchitus that's not able to be eaten. And the Chachamim, which we're going to say is Reb Meir, said they disagreed. And we have the same machlekes over here, legabi kisi adam. Well, you need a shchita in order to have a din kisi adam. Reb Meir says that even if you had a shchita, any one of these shchitas that the Mishnah mentioned, where it's also to eat it, it's still a shchita. It still has a din shchita, and it's going to have a din of kisei adam. And the Chacham, which is Rav Shimon, say shchita she'ein ruya lo yishma shchita legabi kisei adam. That's going to be pater in kisei adam. However, if he shechs and he makes it into an avela, or if he doesn't do a shchita at all, he splits it in half, or he yanks out the simonim, so there was no shchita, then there's no kisei adam. That even Rav Shimon would say it's shchita she'ein ruya, which is even Rav Meir would agree that it's not a shchita at all. He didn't do a shchita, so it's not a shchita she'ein ruya even. Amrav Chia bar Abba Amrav Yechon Ra Rebbe Dvarav Shel Meir ba'osav espenoi v'shanu b'lashon chacham u'Reb Shimon b'kisei adam v'shanu b'lashon chacham. He explains why did we switch by osav espenoi when we were saying the machlekes Rav Shimon and Reb Meir. We said Rav Shimon argues on the chachamim, which the chacham is Reb Meir, and over here when we have the same machlekes, we quote it as Reb Meir being chaylik on the chacham. We call Rav Shimon the chacham, and the answer is my time. So the answer is because he agreed with Rav Shimon on over here by Hashoich of a Nimtzis Treifa. Therefore, he calls him the chacham. But Legabe Oisev Esbenoi, he agreed with Rav Meir, passing like Rav Meir, so he called Rav Meir the chacham. So my time to Rav Meir by Oisev Esbenoi. We're going all the way back to the previous parak. We never said the reason for the machlekes between Rav Shimon and Rebbe, whether shchita she'ein ruya shmo shchita, that Rav Meir says it is and Rav Shimon says it's not. Amar Rav Yishua, what's the reason for Rav Meir that he says ba'osav espenoi shchita she'ein ruya is shmo shchita? Amar Yishua ben Levi gama shchita mishchutei chutz. You learn it out. The Torah uses the lashon shchita on osav espenoi. He uses the word shchita on shchutei chutz. Right? It says Shari Kesavayez is Benoi Le Sishka to be Yoim Echad, Oiseves Benoi, and Ish Mives Yisrael, Asher Yishchat Shari Kesavayez, Vemachne, Asher Yishchat Chutz Michutz Lamach. So use the Lashon Shchita on Shkutei Chutz. Ma Hosam Shchita She'en Ruya Shma Shchita. Just like by Shkutei Chutz, when a person shechts outside, we don't say, oh, you're not going to be chayiv for Shkutei Chutz because you didn't do a Shchita. You have to do a Shchita b'chutz. This is a Shchita She'en Ruya. So there's no such thing. That's what the Torah asks. Torah asks is shechting outside. So you can't say it's not, that's obviously a Shchita She'en Ruya. It's not going to be able to be eaten. And even so, it's called a shchita. Av hachanami shchita she'enu ruya shma shchita. So we'll learn that to oisav esbenai. Rav Shimon, my time, why does Rav Shimon disagree? It says by Yosef, when he asked them to prepare food for his brothers, he said, go and shecht and prepare it. Malon shchita ruya. Over there, it was a shchita ruya. Yosef told him to shecht it properly for achila. Afkan shchita ruya. So we'll learn from there. Teveach is a lashon. Tavuach is a lashon of shchita. So we'll make a gzeir shava from tavuach, which is similar to shchita. So why don't we learn out from this pasuk that Rav Shimon brought? It's not the same word. We'd rather do the gzeir shava from shchita rather than shchita to tvicha. So we see this many times throughout Shas that we're not makbid on having the exact same word for gzeir shava. When you have a similar word, you'll use the similar word rather than a synonym, another word that means the same thing. Why Taka doesn't Rav Shimon? Why does he learn from Taviach Tavach instead of from Shutei Chutz? He says, I'll rather learn the Shchita of Yosef, which is the Shchita of Chullin, and we'll teach it to Oisev Esbenoi, which is also Chullin. It's not Bedavka Kachim, it could be Chullin or Kachim. And instead of learning from Shchutei Chutz, which is only Kachim. Meir, Atu, Oisev Esbenoi, the Kachim, Nile Noig. He says Oisev Esbenoi is Noig by Kachim as well. So how could you say that Oisev Esbenoi is Chullin, and therefore you learn it from the case of Yosef, which is Chullin, but Oisev Esbenoi is not Bedavka Chullin. So that's the reason why this is a good kasha on Rav Shimon, and therefore they paskin like the Chachamim like Rameya. Now we're going to go to Kisei Adam. My time to Rameya Kisei Adam. Why does Rameya say we say Shchita she'enu ruya shma Shchita by Kisei Adam? Rav Shimon lakish gama shvicha mishkutei chutz. We have a lashon of shvicha by Kisei Adam. It says asher yotzut tzayir chayei oif asher yachal v'shafach is damai, and it says also l'gabe shkutei chutz dam yichashav l'ishahu dam shafach v'nichas evishum mikarev amai. So you learn Amala learn shchita she'enu ruya shma shchita. Avkan shchita she'enu ruya shma shchita, just like we had learned l'gabe Yosef Esbenoi from shkutei chutz. Rav Shimon asher yachal ksiv. He says that's true. You have a gzeir shava, but I have a direct limit. It says legabe the din of Kisei Adam. It says asher yachal asher yotzud tzayid chayayoif asher yachal, that he will eat. So that tells you that has to be roy to eating. If it's not roy to eat, then it's not doesn't have the din of Kisei Adam. He says that's coming to exclude an oif tameh, an animal that's not an eagle, that's not a kosher animal. That's where you don't have Kisei Adam if you're shech. Shimon oif tameh, my time at the la barachilu, trefanami la barachilu. He says that's not a valid distinction to say when the Torah says sheshe yachal, it's only referring to an animal it's not edible, that's not kosher. It says sheshe yachal, it means anything that makes it that it can't be eaten, whether it's because it was a treifa, or if it was because it was a treifa animal. That's why we chose to go with the Dvarim of Rav Shimon, because he had the better of the argument. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue on Matzah Shabbos with the next blot.
Have a
Thank you. Have a
Shabbos.
great Shabbos.